Ocho ya sampo pa gyu rashi pa tuche tempe trinle chin palden lame shabla solwa de Om Guru Vajra Dara Suma Timo Nisha Sane Karm Utta Varda Nishri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Om Guru Vajra Dara Suma Timo Nisha Sane Karm Utta Varda Nishri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Ma Guru Vajra Dara Suma Timonish Uta Varda Nishri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Om Guru Vajra Dara Suma Timonisha Sane Kar Uta Varda Nishri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Om Guru Vajra Dara Suma Timo Nisha Sane Kar Uta Varda Nishri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Om Guru Vajra Dara Suma Timo Nisha Uta Varda Nishri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Dhagi Jitsun Lama Tuje Che Nyamda Dala Tuje Siksu So Gebe Shesan Dala Tendo So Uyon Sunge Nawa Tsedo So Tsechi Nyingne Salwa Debe Tse Dechen Kolo Visu Lekshune Yela Sambe Deden Malepa Geme Lhinge Drupra Jinge Loa Tsonye Sodan Dikdun Shakpe Tse Dunge namke yin so lekshune lapchen tsoni yon so zopa tang chera nye dun changwara chinge loa chancho pargi nyen sen tukun tu nyu peme siudro lekshune chancho drube gegen kunshi shi Dunge dela drubra jinge loa dagi lo na chola chokpa tang chomi samchor ngenba shi Shodan tumbe dudun malupa Beme lunge drubra jinge loa dorna tengne tsira tamche da Teche pardone kava tamche tu Rese kyamne lama kele me tukche chenge dala sikso so Gongyab drewe nyamta da chala Chetsun la me tuche rab gongne Kodan sunge nawa dral me tu Nyam sunyongwe kesan top rasho Kewa kundu yanda lama dan rame cheki pe la longche sadan lamge yende rabzon dorje change kopa nyur tobe sho Pakyuke kudan dagi alo pakyuke sundan dagi nga pakyuke tukdan dagi yi Ten yerme çıktı çingi alo Ma köke kudan dagi alo Ma köke sundan dagi nga Tukdan dagi yi Ten yerme çıktı çingi alo Om Muni Mahamuni Shakyamuni Swaha Om Muni Mahamuni Shakyamuni Swaha Om Muni chodan tsoge chonam la chancho pardo dani kyapso chi dagi jinso gibe sonam ki drola pinchira sangye druparasho sangye chodan tsoge chonam la chancho pardo dani kyapso chi dagi jinso gibe sonam ki drola pinchira sangye druparash sangye chetan tsogi chonam dani kyapsu chi dagi jinso gibe sonam ki drola pinchira sangye druparash. Nel Buddha dagi cedendo. Buonasera.
to develop a new idea, a new concept. So if we take the explanation of a new concept, like let's say that I come and I need to explain something new to you. And I explain the whole concept, and at the end, we take different people who come from like social cultural, like different social cultural, different backgrounds, and if each one tries to then repeat what they've learned, it's going to be hard for them to repeat back what they've actually learned. It's already happened to me, because when people say, "No, Lama, when you said this thing," and I think to myself, "Did I really say that? No. When did I ever say something like that?" Because in reality, what happens is that I do my best to try to transmit something, but in reality, each one, to understand, they use their own means to understand. So, we have our own experiences, our own knowledge through which we see the world. I think this is quite clear. But what happens? That most of these building blocks, that we have, they are built during our childhood. So there are 5 types of blocks, like construction, building blocks, that we can use to build our experiences and our worldview, through which we're going to construct even a concept somehow, a perception of reality. There are some blocks, let's call them like this, that are called in Tibetan Kunpen, which one brings from life to life. So we are born with certain predispositions. Other construction blocks, building blocks, that come from our so-called DNA. They're kind of imprints that come through our body, that have come through our parents, our grandparents, our great-grandparents. And there are studies, for example, that show that there are some types of traumas and fears that are physically handed down from generation to generation in human beings, but also in animals. There's some very interesting studies done. One, I remember, they studied a kind of bird that had been born in. They were hatched in a laboratory, and so they had never seen anything other than the white of a laboratory, and they had never seen nature. And when they showed a shadow that looked like a type of bird like them, then they would look like the mother. They would go out to look for their mother, or so they were curious. But instead, when the shadow looked like a bird of prey, they would try to run away or hide without ever having actually seen either one. It's a way to show that there are certain instincts, certain aspects that let's say they come through our DNA, Rikyu in Tibetan. It's through our blood lineage, through our body mostly. So there's a part that comes from that, and we're influenced by our body and by what our parents and grandparents, great-grandparents, our ancestors have lived. And so there's also that characteristic. And then there's another part that has to do with other building blocks that are it's the knowledge that we receive, what we study, what we learn conceptually. So we receive a kind of conceptual luggage, what we're taught, etc. And that's Jantok Gyunten, and then Nyungtup Gyunten, and those are qualities that we acquire through experience. That's you can tell me what you want, but if I have a certain experience, my experience is worth much more than whatever is told to me. You can tell me, oh no, you can trust me, but if I've had many experiences where I haven't been able to trust, then it's going to be difficult for me. So let's just remember that when we're in front of a situation, when we are in front of our daily reality, our perception of reality, the way that we relate with everything, we have these, let's call them building blocks to construct our view. There's some aspects that according to Buddhist philosophy, we bring from life to life, and then there are genetic ones, and then there are all the social, cultural ones that come from our experiences that we've lived, and then there are those that come through what we study. So if we were to not interact with anything except ourselves, let's say that if we closed ourselves up in a room and we saw the same thing day after day, our perception of reality wouldn't have many stimuli to change. We would stay fixed there because we're able to see what we're able to see, and we can't go beyond what we already know in some way. Instead, once we interact with others, this interaction allows us to come into contact with certain situations, certain people, with certain knowledge, that somehow, we connect the dots and we then produce a third thing. We add, 1 plus. I put together my vision of the world, my experience, and it's going to come into contact with yours, with what happens, and through that, I come to a conclusion. What happens is, very often, we have to deal with people and contexts, experiences that have a very similar worldview, similar to ours, and let's say things how they are. Most of us are just focused on ourselves. If we look at our daily interactions, it really has to do mostly with our own daily survival than anything else. Every once in a while it can happen that there's someone, who interacts with us that makes it so that they bring us to experience, like to go beyond our ordinary life, because we have many interactions in our daily lives, but there are many of them, just are repetitions of what we already know, and we just stay there. Every once in a while, it can happen that every once in a while, I mean, maybe not even in a lifetime. Unfortunately, there are people who spend then an entire lifetime without ever having an experience like this, or able to take advantage of such an opportunity. But every once in a while, we have an interaction that allows us to see reality through a different perspective, that allows us to open up our own view, change a little bit our worldview. And these are moments of great importance in our life, because I'm sure that every moment of our life, every meeting is important. Nothing is nothing. But there are others, there are other experiences where we really see that there's a before and an after. And one reason for which, in our Tibetan Buddhist tradition, it says that at the basis of our inner growth is at the basis of that is to shenye tenso, which means to correctly rely on a spiritual master. The master in Sanskrit is guru. Because if I look for myself, I'm going to keep repeating the same things. Every once in a while, I see how we live our lives, and it seems like video games that we do when we're children. Because we do something, we see that it doesn't work, and what do we do normally? Okay, do we not do it anymore, or do we just start all over? I remember these video games where you did something, it didn't work out, you fall, game over, and then you repeat game over, repeat. And sometimes I look around, and even myself, and I see that we have this great will and this great perseverance. But unfortunately, our perseverance is in things that just don't work. I mean, how many times have we seen that thing just doesn't work out, and we just keep repeating it, keep doing it, because deeply, each one of us has a desire, has a deep wish, which is the wish to be happy and to not suffer. This is the most important strength that we have, the will that we have inside. It's what pushes us to do everything that we do, and somehow it never loses hope. Because once you've tried and it hasn't worked, there's a little voice that says, try again. And then you try again, it doesn't work out, okay, try again. It's a little bit the story that I've told many times, that many years ago. I was invited to a school in Milan to talk to children. The school was called Maria Pizzicone. It's a really beautiful school. It's a public school in Milan. And they had a kind of an alternative method of I remember inside the school there was a small farm. It was really nice. And these teachers had seen me at an interreligious encounter, and they invited me. And because they invited me, I went. I didn't even know what I was supposed to really do. And I got there, and they met me in their gym, which had a wood floor, and there were about 200 children between 5 and 7 years old. And they told me, okay, now I asked what should I do, and then they asked me to talk about Buddhism, to make an introduction to Buddhism. And they told me I had an hour and a half, and I said, oh my goodness, I mean, I didn't have this habit, I didn't have this experience of talking to small children like that. And I said, well, let's try. And I started trying to talk about the 4 Noble Truths in a very simple way. And at a certain point, I learned something really beautiful about talking to small children, is that when you ask a question, they answer you in choir. You know, it's not like when you ask adults, or then they're ashamed to answer, or they're afraid of giving the wrong answer. No, instead, when you ask children something, they all answer together. So I was doing a kind of a question and answer to help us. At a certain point, I was talking about desire, and I asked them, children, did it ever happen? First I asked them, is there a toy that you would like to have? Everyone, yes. Did it ever happen that, like, for your birthday or for Christmas, that you were able to get the toy that you wanted? Everyone, yes. Were you happy? Yes. How long did your happiness last? A long time or just a short time? And they looked at me a little, just a short time. Do you still have that toy? Yes. Does it make you as happy as it did before? No. Do you want another toy? Yes. How long will that toy keep you happy, make you happy? And they looked at me. They didn't answer so strongly together, but they said, "Oh, just a short amount of time." And it's not that they were like spiritually developed children or very prepared to understand that material things are just, just a just a trap and that can't sustain our happiness. I mean, it's something that we've always known, and when we're children, we have the video game and the doll and the little and then we have, their clothes and the boyfriend and the car, and then depending on what you're able to get, the helicopter. I had a friend actually who was sad because he couldn't buy a bank. Once I was with someone who was supposed to get onto his. I was with someone when we were we were getting onto his private plane, and he turned to me and he said, the only difference between big and small boys is the size of their toys. That when we're small, we repeat continuously. I mean, we just keep trying to change our toy instead of changing game. Deeply, we know that thing is not going to sustain our happiness, but we repeat it anyway because we don't have an alternative, a real alternative that we trust, otherwise we'd follow, that we deeply follow, that we deeply trust. So we have this deep wish to not suffer and to be happy, and we try in every way, but we just keep repeating the same things. We repeat the same dynamics continuously. We believe that to be happy we need to obtain our objects of desire, to not be separated from our objects of attachment, and to avoid the objects of aversion. In other words, we believe that we will be happy if I can have what I want, to not be separated from what I like and avoid what I don't like. And most of our life it turns around this. And life just goes on. Even if sometimes when we're able to obtain what we have, after a while it just doesn't sustain that happiness. Because if somebody asked us, someone gave us the possibility, it's like, I allow you to, it'll be possible for you to have everything you want. You don't ever need to be separated from what you like, and you can avoid everything that you don't like. Is that something you would want? Me, yes. I'd be super happy. In reality, I don't trust that. As it's even this Italian proverb that says, the more I have, the more I want. Because once, so, what's important is also how long these things last. Because even if I can have everything I want today, it's not going to be enough tomorrow, because tomorrow I'll want something else. But we're just getting to the point, because I do want to get to somewhere here. We have this tendency to repeat the same ways, the same dynamics, to try to be happy and to avoid our suffering. And mostly we project our happiness on our objects of desire, which are material, physical, the recognition of our image, and also this possession of people, as if that were possible. But we believe it, and somehow we just continuously try to be happy like this by projecting in this way. And we can say that the strongest object of desire that we have the object of greatest attachment is the reality, the way we think it should be. We have an idealized image of how things, or a situation, or person, everything, how things should be. And we grasp at that. And if it's not like that, then we're upset and we do everything possible for reality to correspond to how we think reality should be, how it should be. And what happens is that if we were just left, then we would just keep repeating the same things, the same dynamics, life after life. And luckily, there are beings who have been able to go beyond, who have been able to understand, not just conceptually, but also in their experience, they've been able to realize how this cycle really works and how it's possible and exist in a harmonious way and reach a state of stability and joy and peace. Real, really. Because the point at the end of the day is not about feeling happiness, but is finding a sustainable happiness. Let's use to use a term that we use these days, a sustainable happiness, because we've all felt joy and happiness and peace. But it comes, it arises, and after a while it disappears. And so we're always in this kind of we're in this roller coaster of happiness and sadness and highs and lows. So if we were left alone, our tendency would be just to repeat what we already do and what we already know. When we have the great luck, the possibility to come into contact with someone who has a world view that's different from our own, who has a different experience, who is able to go beyond his own dynamics of suffering, etc., and opens our minds. It's one of the most wonderful things that can happen in our lives. And this is why it's said at the beginning of the path, that's one of the reasons. The basis of our path, at the basis of our path is relying correctly on a spiritual guide. I need to be able to rely on someone who can see more than me, because when I'm alone, I get to where I can get, and I keep repeating the same things if there's not someone there to help me go beyond. It's obvious. I mean, it can be the Buddha himself, but he'll never be able to take his or her knowledge and put it into my head or into my heart or any place. The only thing he can do is interact with me until I'm able to use my experiences, my knowledge, as we talked about before, to be able to transform my worldview. And it's here where one of the most important qualities of a spiritual guide, of a guru, is to adapt himself to the mentality and the abilities of others. Because it's the one who's helping is the one who should adapt, and not the opposite. And when we're being helped, we should try to also adapt. But in the end, it's really the one helping who should adapt to the one he's trying to help. And in our lives, there are just few times that we have this opportunity to come into a contact with people who have not only a view that transcends our own, but also experiences that go beyond our own, that don't talk, that they don't just talk about different things. They are different things. These are people who have enormous power, transformation, because I believe that a human being can do great things, can build bridges, can invent medicines, can do wonderful, beautiful things. Artwork, there's beautiful things. Compose beautiful music, etc. But the most powerful thing, the most beautiful thing that a human being can do is to touch deeply the mind and the heart of someone else and open his or her eyes to have a different worldview, a worldview that corresponds better to what reality is. This is the greatest thing that someone can do, and it's not easy. I mean, just look in our own lives. How many people in our lives? How many people can we open? How many we open their eyes? So it's seldom that we come into contact with experiences like this, and most of us have had this, and I don't even know how to explain it, this experience of having met a being like this, Lama Gangchen Rinpoche. I remember the first time I met Rinpoche, I was very young, I was 5 years old, living in Brazil. And even today, that memory of that inner feeling, the context was a little strange. We were in a Japanese restaurant in Sao Paulo, and it was quite particular. The situation was particular because my mother helped to invite Lama Gangchen to Brazil without knowing him, and this was the first time they were meeting. And so we walked into this restaurant. I have a vague memory of that scene. Rinpoche was already in the restaurant in the back, and when they saw each other, my mother and Rinpoche, they started laughing as if something had happened. I don't know, it was like a laughing fit. But I remember that when I saw him for the first time, I had this deep feeling of trust. I felt at home, and the feeling that I could trust him. And that was a moment that just changed in all aspects of my life. And I saw that Rinpoche had this ability to touch deeply and to change deeply the innumerable number of people, and not with just particular concepts. I mean, that also was happened, but it was with his own presence. Because when we come into contact with someone who has a deep state of peace, that shows us that it's possible to get there ourselves. When we come into contact who has a deep feeling of love towards another, not love, the conditional love where one sees another through the filter of himself. I'm talking about a sincere love, a love that is not conditioned by the I and the my. When we see someone who has this quality and we're in his presence, that transforms us, that touches us deeply. Of course, we also need to be open. And Rinpoche was someone who had this marvelous role of touching the heart of so many people. For me and for so many others, and to show us a different worldview. Also, always in a very sweet, simple way, not where he needed to impose anything, even if Rinpoche had Yeah, even though he had, infinite patience and repeated things, 5,000 times. I mean, how many times did we hear, inner peace is the most solid foundation for world peace? Or, I mean, if it were something conceptual, we would have answered, oh, we've understood Rinpoche. Instead, it's about changing our worldview. And among the many things that he taught us, I learned more, much more, in what was beyond or between the lines, between the words, and not in the words themselves. When I was studying Buddhist philosophy in India, I learned that one of the ways to teach the Dharma means teaching the Dharma silently through appearances of the body, said in Tibetan, and so when we were studying, we would joke around saying, like, how could one teach the Dharma without speaking, making gestures or whatever? No, instead, when we're in the presence of someone who has his own stability, who has love, naturally that transmits something to us, that teaches us much more than words can. And many of us have this marvelous opportunity. It's obvious that no matter how close we can get to an enlightened being, or be to an enlightened being, as we said at the beginning, not even a Buddha can take no enlightened being can take his qualities and put them inside of us, but he can interact with us, and we can use our own abilities, our own experiences to use what we receive and transform. There's no other way. It's like when we go to the doctor. What the doctor can do is to give us a diagnosis, give us a treatment according to our own needs. And the one who needs to heal is ourselves. We're the ones who need to follow the diet, take the medicine, follow the treatment. Going to the doctor does not heal. We can go back to the doctor 35 times. It's not going to heal you. You can buy all of the medicine. It's not going to heal. What heals is just assuming that the diagnosis and the treatment are correct. Then what heals is following the prescription. And similarly, when we find ourselves in front of our own spiritual guide, it's not just enough to be there. And that's why along the path, in the Lamrim, in the graduated path to enlightenment, it's taught that the first step is relying correctly on a spiritual guide, which means I want to get better. I want to be good with myself. I want to be at peace with myself. I want to get out of this constant cycle of anger and envy and jealousy and arrogance, attachment, dissatisfaction, selfishness, arrogance. I can't handle it anymore. And I need someone who can help me be at peace with myself and as a consequence at peace with others. Because remember that we'll never be at harm. We'll never find harmony with others if we're not at peace with ourselves. I had an experience a short time ago that really opened my mind that showed me how to see things in a different perspective. There were some situations, and I realized that certain situations, no matter how difficult they are, complex or tense, different kinds of situations, maybe they don't do anything to me. They don't touch me. They don't bother me. I don't lose my peace. I don't lose my state of balance. Instead, there are other situations, maybe less serious, less important, that instead that I react badly to. And what I realized is that when we live situations, it happens to me. I imagine it happens to you too. That when we live a situation, what we comes out. I mean, it's like some kind of sound. What we live. If it brings out some kind of sound in us, it's because there's some kind of conflict or some kind of pain, some kind of trauma, some kind of wound that is not resolved. That it just it shows that we're not well in ourselves, and it's like a kind of that experience makes this sound come out, let's say. I mean, it could be something really simple, a very, very unimportant experience, but if that, it resounds something inside of us, then that's just showing that there's something unresolved inside. Instead, it may be even a situation that can be much more serious, but maybe doesn't touch us because it doesn't touch an unresolved part. So this shows us that it's not enough to live in a pleasurable place. No matter how much I change the situations around me and the places and the people, I mean, I bring myself wherever I am. And I bring my pains and my sadness and my tensions and my ignorance and my selfishness. I bring all of that with me. So my objective is to reach a state of peace with myself so that I can live peacefully with the world that surrounds me. And once we have this awareness, we understand that in reality we can't do it alone. We need someone who's going to guide us. I mean, if to learn how to cook, I need someone to teach me, or to learn how to read and write, or to make a piece of furniture, even very simple things. We need people to teach us. So imagine, learning how to grow spiritually, to have more peace, becoming more stable, etc. We need someone who can show us how to develop these tools. Once we find someone, and there are two ways to find them from my point of view. There's a more rational way, where I try different spiritual traditions. I look for certain qualities, or in the in Buddhist tradition, we talk about the 10 qualities of the Mahayana teacher, for example. So then one looks and looks through let's say a conceptual path. Another way is when we meet someone who touches our heart really deeply, as if we've fallen in love, and there's no explanation, but we just fall in love with that person. There's a deep connection. There's the great sense of trust, and over time, it should be deepened and strengthened. But there's that first impact. I mean, so there's two different ways, and one can fall in love slowly, or it could be love at first sight. And the same thing happens, when we're looking for a spiritual guide. But once we've found him, and many of us who are here in Albagnano, or those who are following from home, you've found your spiritual guide. So, Lama Gangchen Rinpoche, for most of you as well. So the second step in Lamrim is, after having relied correctly on a spiritual guide, the second step that we need to do is to develop a deep awareness of the preciousness of this life. The fact that we have a condition and we live in a context, we have opportunities that are not repeated every day, and they're not for everyone. They're called the 10 freedoms and the 8 endowments, which means having the conditions to be able to follow a spiritual path. The basis is having the minimum necessary, which on a material level was like a healthy body, and then having the one who guides us correctly, and having the desire to be guided. Just taking the first one, I mean, without talking about other parallel realities or planets, just put that aside. That's another topic. Let's just think about this planet Earth that we know where we are now. They say that there's 7 billion people. They say, because I've never counted them. We're about 7 billion people on the planet, and they say that among these 7 billion people, about half, live under the poverty line. Whether it's half or a little more than half, a little under than half, that's a lot of people. That means there's an enormous amount of people, people who wake up in the morning and they don't know if they're going to have food to eat or not. So what does that mean from a spiritual point of view? It doesn't mean that I'm better than they are, but I have a condition that allows me, that gives me the space, the inner space to think about others. I mean, let's imagine that we don't have a lot to eat for a long time, or we don't know for how long. I mean, let's see if we're better or worse than they are. Once I was coming back from Brazil, I was in the airport. It was the time that there weren't these carts for luggage, and at a certain point there was a group of people who were waiting for them, and there were about 5 carts arrived, and I saw these like very well dressed people, and then there were like 4 people fighting for one cart, and they were just yelling profanities at each other. It was crazy. I mean, they were almost fighting physically. And when I saw that, I thought, and what if this was food that they had to fight for? It's not that we are better than others. We have better conditions. But if we didn't have food to eat, our inner space would be taken up by the need for food. And it would be hard, not impossible, but it would be hard for someone to have the ability to breathe calmly, to recognize the importance of developing patience and in gratitude and love. I mean, the priority is finding food. Then the numbers that I had heard some time ago, there was another 2.5 billion people. So at that, it was 2.5 billion, or in that situation, and another 2.5 billion that are just above that line, and maybe they work 12 to 16 hours a day just to have food on the table. So life is used up to survive. So life is about survival. And in this case, one doesn't have the time or the space, doesn't have the freedom to use life for something, because life is just used up by life itself. If we see that we are outside, this is 5 billion. There are another 2 billion left. So among these 2 billion, there's a part that has great wealth, and we're part of that group where we have food. We can protect our body from heat and from cold. But of these people, even if these people have all these necessary conditions, but anyway, they're using up their life with life itself, with a kind of survival based on desires and needs, where one lives for life, for work. I see where we say, for example, I buy a car to go to work, and then I work to pay for my car, and I just go round and round of this. I mean, and then I end up spending my life as a child. I study to find a good job, and then I spend my life working. I get home, I turn on the TV or whatever it is. The next day, same thing. Every once in a while, there's a vacation, and life just goes on. There's a channel 5 or whatever. Then there are those who have the possibility to come into contact with the spiritual path, and it's something that can help us to take care of what continues from month to month, life, year to year, life to life. But even here, if we look among all religions, most use the spiritual tools for mundane objectives, or can we say that most of them actually use the spiritual tools for spiritual objectives? Just look at the prayers that are, most prayers are requests for health, good health, work, study, love, conflicts, the resolution of conflicts. Difficult to find a prayer that says, please pray for me so that I can develop an inner state of balance, and so that I no longer react with aggression in different difficult situations, or may I react towards others with love and patience and generosity, just to invent anything. There are very few prayers like this. It's enough just to look at the world around us, our family members, our friends, the people we know. What's the percentage of those, independently of the fact that they follow a religion or not, or the religion itself? I mean, how many of them have an objective to develop themselves inside, that have the awareness that reality is lived from inside to out and not the opposite? Are there a lot of people like this, or just a few? Instead, to be able to be part of this, we can call it elite. Why is it precious? Because if we're able to use it well, it allows us to diminish our suffering and reach a state of happiness, and as a consequence be able to help others. So when we say that our life is precious, it's not precious in and of itself, but we have a condition, a particular condition. We have a situation that it isn't repeated every day. Buddha described that living with this these conditions, this opportunity was like a turtle who lives at the bottom of the ocean. The turtle has a very, very long life and then comes up for air every 100 years. The turtle is blind and deaf, and instead there's a buoy that just floats around freely in the ocean. What's the probability that that turtle is going to put its head through the yoke? This is the example given from Buddhist teachings. And that compares our own probability of having these conditions. And it's not like, oh, we're so special. No, look at the opportunity that we have. So the consequence of this is not, it shouldn't be about feeling superior. And it's not that it, no, we need to think that we cannot lose this opportunity, because the third step is the awareness of our own impermanence, because at a certain point it's going to end. So what happens is, I don't know why we're here, why we were close to Rinpoche, why us and not others, why me and you and not others, or why today we're here together. Sincerely, I don't know. At the same time, I don't feel better than anyone else or superior to anyone else. What I feel is that I have an opportunity, and I'm not alone. We have an incredible opportunity that is incredibly difficult to find. And we can't lose it. Just think about the fact, personally, I've met marvelous people in my life. I remember the abbot of Tashilhunpo, and it was also a master of Lama Gangchen called Gangchen Rinpoche, and I think about the people who have met him here with Nune and stuff. For me, he was, just being in his presence was something absolutely marvelous. Beyond kind of mystical ideas. But it was said he was my first master of philosophy, and it was said that he didn't have a shadow, and he would sit by. I was 12 years old. I was very young. He would sit there by the window, and once as a child I asked him, they said that you don't have a shadow. Is that true? And he didn't answer yes or no. He just changed the subject, and I started watching that there were like the shadows of things that were there, like on his table. The objects on the table, for example, there was very, very strong shadow. Instead, the shadow of his body was like the shadow of a glass, of a vase, because it was very subtle. But that's not the important point. The important point is having contact with someone who is so developed. We had so much love and wisdom. You just need to meet someone once in your lifetime to be touched, and many of us have met not one or two, but many. And among all of the precious people that I met in my lifetime, like Lama Gangchen Rinpoche, I was like none other. He wasn't like the great the great professor who wasn't there explaining. He wouldn't go around with debate and with great eloquence explaining things, but his strength was his being. I think of Nimotuko Rinpoche, for example, this very special master who came here. Di in 2018, he came here. In April 2018, he came here. Nimotuko Rinpoche. He is a very important master in Tibet. Every once in a while, he sends me messages. He sends me voice messages saying, "Let me see, I have it here out there, so you can listen. You can listen." He says, "Oh, how are you? How are things going? Everything's fine. I think of you often. How are you?" That was, he sent me a message asking me, "How are you? How are things?" I had explained I explained about the stupa. He sent me a donation of 1,500 euros for the stupa, which I sent back to him. But he's always thinking about us, and he's always in contact with us. So Nimo Tuka today is one of the most important masters in Tibet. And he didn't have a relationship with Rinpoche of master-disciple, and even in their lifetime they didn't have that many meetings. But the master of Nimo Tuko, who was Demo Gonsa Rinpoche, who was one of the most important masters in the history of Buddhism, he was... the word I can't think about to explain, like his how grandiose he was in all ways. Before dying, he said to Nimotuko Rinpoche, he said, "The day that I won't be here anymore, whatever Lama Gangchen Rinpoche says, you do." And when Rinpoche later went to Tibet, Nimotuko had invited him to his monastery. He offered him a long life puja. At that time, he said, "I accept, but based on the condition that you also accept a long life puja the offered by me." It was really beautiful that we together, as disciples of Rinpoche, we offered the long life puja to him and him, and then when we went to his monastery, there were a couple thousand monks who organized this long life puja for Rinpoche. So they had this exchange, and in that time he invited him to come here to Albagnano, and he said yes, not because there was a specific reason, but he said, "My guru told me that I should trust what Lama Gangchen says, that I should do what he says." So this came to my mind to say that I've known so many masters of different kinds, and what one looks for in a master, I mean, is not is eloquence or knowledge, that's nice, but what we're really looking for is realizations. And we've had this great opportunity of being close to a being like this. And it doesn't matter if it was once or 1,000 times. I mean, even just one meeting can mean so much. For those who have not had this opportunity, we try to recreate it indirectly. It's not, of course, it's not the same thing. But what I wanted to bring to you today, more than anything else, is that I can't understand really with all clarity, why us? When I think of each one of us, why us? Why did we have this opportunity? I don't know. And it's not because we've had this opportunity that we're necessarily better than anyone else. But we can't lose it. Because the third point in the Lama is that we're going to die. That life goes by quickly. And once we've looked back, it's just gone. And our mind transforms itself in a gradual way, not with immediate changes. They're long, gradual processes, and that's why every moment is important. If we see it in the practices that our teachers have taught us, there's no initiation or ceremony or anything that is very like once you do that everything everything transforms. No, there's the transmission of the practices that then one needs to do every day, because what transforms is not the empowerment that you take that one time, no matter how important it is, but it's daily life, how you live your life. As Rinpoche often reminded us, speak with peace, look with peace, touch with peace, peace listening, peace with everything with peace. I mean, how many times did we hear that? So, innumerable times. Why did Rinpoche tell us these things? I imagine that one reason is because we don't do it. If he said once peace speaking, and then everyone had started speaking with peace, then he wouldn't have had to repeat himself. Instead, we have our own conditioning of mental defilements, of fear and anxiety and jealousy and aggression, and we're influenced by that. So he was there to tell us, peace looking, peace speaking. He was so nice. He would say, "You have such beautiful eyes. Why do you have to make your eyes ugly by looking with aggressive eyes?" Or, "The Italian language is so beautiful. Why do you have to make it ugly by using aggressive speech?" But the reason why he just repeated himself often is because of the mind is transformed through training, through repetition, through familiarization. And that's why, with that infinite love, the infinite patience, he was always there repeating the same things. Sometimes what happens is that as long as there's someone next to us who repeats and lifts us up, then we kind of get used to falling down because there's someone there to pick us up. But when that person isn't there anymore, the one to pick us up, we ourselves need to put into practice what we've received, so we can stand up on our own 2 feet. And this is inevitable because we're born alone, we live alone, and we're going to die alone. No one can live our lives for us. It's up to us to live it according to how we want it to become. No one else. We are not the result of the world that surrounds us. Our emotional states, our even physical state, and who we are is not a result of the world around us. No one is a victim of anyone. Me, first and foremost. Rinpoche often repeated this phrase of Buddha, I am my own protector, I am my own enemy. What happens though is we have our habits. They've been there for a long time, probably lifetimes. As we said today at the beginning, we talked about 4 types of habits. I called them building blocks, but they're those characteristics that we take from life to life, or we bring from our previous life, those that are genetic, that we receive from our body, those that come through our experiences that we've lived, and then those that come through the concepts that we learn. And in the middle of all this, we live, we repeat. And probably there are many habits that we bring with us from many lives, other habits and other ways of doing that we bring with us because we saw them in our parents, or we were raised in a certain context. There are aspects of how we are that are based on how we lived, and then we repeat them. There are other ways of doing that come from concepts that we've acquired. I think that we can, everyone has their story, but it's a little bit like saying, I need to accept everyone for who they are, but I don't need to resign myself to being, who I am. I don't know if that's clear. I need to accept everyone for who they are. I can also accept myself, but I shouldn't resign myself to accepting myself for how I am. I need to put effort into being more stable and joyous and with more peace. I need to put effort into becoming more like my guru, because one of the functions of the guru is being a real mirror, showing us how we should become, kind of like one of those thinning mirrors that shows us a better version of ourselves. It shows us you can become like this. One of the functions of a guru is this. So no one has any time to lose. None of us. We're not children anymore. And even if we were, we still wouldn't have time to lose. We don't have time to lose with jealousy. There is, but we just don't have time to lose with envy. Because this is like this, and that's like that, and like here and there with conflicts. We need to take to heart the advice that has been given to us. Take to our heart the teachings that we've received. Like, as Rinpoche would say, my sadhana is inner peace. One commitment is inner peace. Or how many times Rinpoche say, no gossip, only positive gossip. Just to say a few, without making a long list of complex teachings. Just take a few points. At least, if we take them like strong points, and just say, no matter what happens, I'm not going to lose this. It's important. We've received marvelous, wonderful things like the practice of self-healing. We need to use it. We sit down on the cushion and meditate. No one can do that for us. It would be really easy, wouldn't it? Be comfortable. There's a monastery in Tibet called Yume. It's also in India today. And they developed something that after a certain number of years, that someone is at the monastery, they have to take a test, and if they don't pass it, they're expelled. And it's a memorization exam. It's really quite hard. And there's some people that just don't have that ability. So at a certain point in history, to not expel people, those who who would do well in other aspects of the monastery, they they invented this rule that if you are not able to take that exam, then you need to pay someone. You need to pay someone to take it for you. A little bit like in help in action. We would go there and we'd go to these villages to bring help and things, and all the families would come. You know, the people that would receive this help kit, let's say, where they would have food or clothes for the kids or things for school or etc. But they were asked to they were asked for a photograph to show to the sponsors, and then then someone would receive a photo of Lobsang so and so, who's supposed to have 6 years, 6 years old, and then the sponsor would say, "This is not a 6-year-old. This is a 15-year-old." They look at the picture from last year. So. So it's poor Sharon and Erika who manages Help in Action, and then they explained that, oh no, because my son Lobsang, he went to this other city to my uncle, so they were afraid of not being able to receive the things from Help in Action. So then they would the representative, let's say, would come and take the photograph for them. Of course, we would give, to all the families, no matter what. But so there isn't a representative who's going to sit down and meditate for us, or we do it, or it just doesn't happen. I sit down to meditate, or I just don't do it. Nobody can do it for me. Or I familiarize myself with a certain type of conduct, with a certain type of attitude, with a certain type of mental state, or no one can do it for me. I saw that Rinpoche had a very special characteristic. Many, so many, but 2 particular things come to my mind. One is he was able to have a relationship that everyone felt. Everyone felt like an intimate friend, So joking around, we'd say like the 1,500 intimate friends of Rinpoche, maybe even more, because he almost everyone. Anyone who came close to Rinpoche was able to create this close relationship, like a deep friend, a dear father figure. He created this real deep sense of intimacy. It's absolutely unique. And Rinpoche was also, had this amazing ability to adapt himself to any and every context, really transform himself, adapt himself to every context with any kind of person, any kind of context. He said, as he would say, I'm a friend for those who want a friend. I can also be your guru. But what happens is, even if Rinpoche adapted himself to our way of being and our mentality and ability, we, how can I say, each one of us, we need to go beyond ourselves and grow up. I like the beautiful metaphor that talks about the function of the guru and disciple. I said it the other day. It says that the guru is like a gardener. And the function of a gardener is to add water, and to water, to add fertilizer, to prepare the soil. And the function of the flower, of the plant, is to blossom. So, and what's the most beautiful thing that a flower can do for a gardener is to open up and blossom. So, if people say, "Oh, for Rinpoche, I do everything for my guru. I do anything for my guru." You want to then blossom. This is what we need to do more than anything else. Go beyond our own blocks and say, if it's not for me, at least I do it for him. I'm too attached to my things and my blocks, but for him I'll do it. Show it. Show our joy, our stability, our love, respect. I saw Rinpoche had this ability, this marvelous characteristic that he put into practice, and more than it's not that useless to say he put into practice. He was service towards others. His life, in all aspects, from the first to last, it existed in the function of being at the service of others. And something that is taught in a formal way within the Lam Rim is that when we put ourselves at the service of the sentient beings, we are naturally serving also the holy beings, because the Buddhas exist at the service of the sentient beings. And when we're helping the beings, we're doing the service, towards holy beings. That's why it said that when we do something to help other beings, in reality we're also making an offer. We're making an offering to the holy beings as well. It's very clear to me that Rinpoche was continuously at the service of those who were around him. And there was something interesting that by serving Rinpoche, we were serving everyone. This is interesting. When I serve my guru, who is at the service of everyone else, by serving him, I'm serving everyone. And when I can't serve him directly, by serving everyone, I'm serving him too. I don't know if this logic is clear. So independently from the fact that our guru is physically alive or not, physically with us or not, when we serve him, naturally we're serving others, because he lives in service, in function of being at service of others, and when we serve others, we're serving him. I often remember in different long life pujas, he would say, more important than my long life is the long life of the teachings of the Dharma. The way to make this happen mostly is to allow ourselves to go beyond our own limits and put it into practice with sincerity. There are two necessary conditions for a lineage to be living it needs to be transmitted, and there need to be people who have received those teachings and who can, through that, transform their minds. This makes the lineage living. So we can, in our lifetime, be at the service of Rinpoche independently of the fact that he's here with us or not. One, by putting into practice the teachings, and two, by putting us at the service of everyone who's around us, by following his life example. We can, how many times did Rinpoche talk about peace in all aspects? When Rinpoche would say, inner peace is the most solid foundation for the world peace, we can even summarize this or even expand it, depending on how you see it, this by saying inner peace is the most solid foundation for the peace in the office, or peace in the couple, or peace in a family, etc. Because it's obvious that we continuously project the conflicts that we have that are inside of us, but at a certain point that we have these opportunities, and we need to ask ourselves what direction we're taking. Something that I saw in different contexts, it's interesting, is that when a father or a mother dies, independently of their age, and independently, then at that point, independently of the age of the child, often it happens that when the son or daughter lose their mother or father on a physical level, they experience something. How can I explain it? This feeling of, okay, now I need to grow up. I don't have that shoulder to lean on. Now it's up to me. There's this kind of this transference of responsibility, even on a subtle level, independently of age. And this happens also with our spiritual mother or father, our guru. In my life, I've had different masters, and the most important among all of them has always been Lama Gangchen Rinpoche, but I've had others who have also left their body, even recently, and every time that I live this experience, on one side there's a strong sadness, more than sadness, it's like a lacking, it's saudade. There's this kind of sad nostalgia. There aren't words to explain that you're missing this or missing that. It's this emotion of, it's a joy with sadness. It's something very particular. That exists. That's there, but at the same time, my experience is that generates a maturity, saying, okay, now we're forced. Here's my moment to actually put everything into practice, because if I don't do it now, when will I? It's said also in many formal teachings that when the master when he leaves his body, it's just the greatest teaching of impermanence that he's giving us. What does that mean? It's up to us to do it, to practice, to maintain, to realize, to take it forward. And in my opinion, we have a marvelous opportunity. We all do. Really, I'm very grateful to all of you. When I think of each one of you and I see how you all do your part. I mean, no one's perfect, but everyone's doing their part. It's obvious that if we go on to the specifics, everyone can do better. I'm the first one, but I'm really, truly grateful that we're all doing our part. What I wanted to remember today, other than the importance of generating gratitude, what we cultivate every day, is that the best offering that we can give to our Guru is the offering of putting into practice his teachings. So even in the Guru Puja, even after having made outer and inner offerings, before the inner offerings, after the outer offerings and the mandala offering, there's the offering of the inner realizations. It's said to be the best of said that the best offering we can make is offering our own practice. It means putting into practice the teachings in the effort that we put into speaking differently, for taking decisions that are more coherent to everything that we do, that brings us closer and closer to what to being closer and closer to what we want to become, what Rinpoche has shown us, etc. I remember when Rinpoche explained to me once why he wanted to teach the practice of self-healing. He explained, actually, he explained this once when in Milan he was asked to do the healing ceremony of Chaptru and Chetru. Chaptru is a ceremony that's a little easier to take away interferences and sicknesses. Instead, the Chetru is much more complicated. One has to wear white and then black underneath, and it's very complicated. You can be like cords that are like tied up, and then sometime at one point the Rinpoche was asked to do this, and then speaking to him at a certain point, I don't remember if it was before or after, but around in that context, let's say, Rinpoche said, these practices, I've done them so many times, I did them so many times in India. I'm very used to doing these healing practices, but I chose to not do them anymore in the West because I don't want to create I don't want to be here as the Lama to heal. I mean, I want to be here to give you the tools for healing. I don't want you to be dependent on me for the healing. That's why I've given self-healing. I'm giving you the tools to heal. So it's up to us to use it. It's up to us to be there every day. I would like, how can I say, to share with you an experience with one of my masters, Ken Lakpala, which I think can encourage us, or maybe the opposite, I don't know. He told me once, and he told me the story. He was about 70 plus years, and he said that when he started doing his main meditation practice of Yamantaka, he started doing it when he was about 17 years old, and he never stopped doing it. He never missed a single day, even in the most difficult days. I mean, he had this commitment to do it, and he never missed a day, even when he was, escaping Tibet for India. He told me one time, they were so exhausted walking, and they just collapsed on the ground. He woke up and he realized he was sleeping in water. He was so tired he hadn't realized, but he never missed it, not even that day. But he told me that he started understanding the practice like He started when he was about 50 years old. He started understanding the practice, which means about 30 years after having started. And one could say, oh, well, okay, then better to not even start. And what I mean to say with this is that sometimes we have this kind of arrogance. We don't want to do something if we don't totally understand it, even if we feel a benefit. So what happens is that in the practice, like as the word itself says, is something that should be done. It's a training that should be done with constancy. And when we know such a marvelous being like Rinpoche, who at a certain point tells us, I've given you what is the most precious of things, is the self-healing of the practice of the 5 Dhyani Buddhas, without keeping anything back, holding anything back, with giving everything that he had, with no miserliness, no holding back. He's given this to us, so why not practice it? Oh, because I don't understand everything. Well, sooner or later you'll understand something. But this doesn't mean that it's not beneficial, because if you shouldn't do something, because you don't understand it, then you should stop using your telephone, because you don't really understand how it works. Instead, if you do something and you see that it's beneficial, then you should believe in it. Believe in our experiences. Have trust in the ones. Believe in the ones we trust. I'm sure that each one of us, from the first to last, every day of our lives, we have 1,000 problems. This one said this one did that, I need to do this, I shouldn't do that, it hurts here, it hurts there, and today I've got this, and tomorrow I've got that, and I don't have this, and the taxes here, and the money here, and this news, and today is cold, and tomorrow will be hot, and I don't like the wind, and I like here and there. I mean, each one of us has 1,000 different issues, but it's not that tomorrow's going to be different. And life just goes on and on and on. And then once we look back, it's gone. So we can't allow ourselves to not put effort, a part of our energy, a part of our lives, just a part. It should be directed into putting into practice the things that we think are important. Take everything that Rinpoche has transmitted, and pick the most important to you. Just take 2. The peace listening, peace speaking. Take 1. Peace speaking. So peace speaking means that when I go to speak with you, it doesn't just mean to not speak aggressively. No, for me to speak to peace speaking with you is about respect, because when I communicate, I need to take into consideration who is on the other side. I need to be careful. I need to watch how I speak. So peace speaking is a practice for a lifetime. It's marvelous. Peace listening requires, above all, being aware of the presence of the other person, and knowing how to give value to the other. Knowing how to listen without always being ready to judge. Listening with love. This is also practice for a lifetime. As peace looking, peace touching, etc. But my advice is to take one at a time and dedicate a time of our life to that, because every every day is full of issues. Today because this happened, tomorrow because that happened, because today this is missing, tomorrow that will be missing. When one thing is fine, the other thing is not. And someone might be thinking, oh, but you don't know my life, Lama. You don't know mine either. And everyone has his own issues. My life example would be my grandfather. He's about 98 years old, if I'm not wrong. Last time I spoke to him, I said, "Oh no, Grandpa, how are you?" And then the first question he asked me was, how is Rinpoche's stupa going? And I had not even spoken to him about it. My father had. And then at a certain point I said, no, but how are you? And he said, oh, I'm fine, He said, there are things, from my age, And I know that I had actually fallen down the stairs, and he has problems. He's 98 years old. Some parts start not working so well. But his answer was, "Oh, it's so hard. It's so it's so horrible." He said, "Oh, there are things things linked to old age. It's all part of life." So. And there are difficulties in life, and there will always be. But the question is, how much space do we want these difficulties to take up? And how much space do we want to how much space in our life do we want to dedicate to becoming a Buddha, to follow the steps that our Guru has shown us? How much space in our life do we dedicate to that? Because there's the one who is fixated with injustice or aversion or desire, or the one who's afraid of what tomorrow will bring. And everyone has their own issue. If I look around, I can see that everyone has their own issues, and you at home too, and so do I, without a doubt. But in the middle of all of this, which is where life is happening, we should be clear. It should be clear to ourselves, how much energy do I want to dedicate to growing? Just take one thing, like peace speaking, or peace looking, peace listening, before getting to the peace with everything with peace, which is the ultimate realization. There's so many things. I remember once Rinpoche, I was translating for him, and he was talking to somebody, and Rinpoche, talking about him and me, he says, we don't live to make money, to accumulate money. We live to accumulate merits. Just look how he related to material things. He's such a life example, but it's already 8:05. I'm not going to start this whole subject, but the most important point is that this door to our spiritual path is correctly relying on a spiritual guide, but it's not the whole path. Once we have relied correctly on a spiritual guide, we've entered, and now we need to keep walking in the right direction. I don't mean to say that no one's not doing it, but it's just to remind us that life is going on, and we should spend our time putting effort into things that leave something for ourselves and for others. Like once I was in Milan many years ago, and Lama Lawan, who lived in Rinpoche's house, at a certain point I passed by him. I don't remember what I needed to do, and he was watching TV and drinking tea. He loved watching TV, that showed like Muslims praying, and he would say, if we were like them, we would do so much more. They're praying six times a day, and there he was watching TV. At a certain point, he said to me, come and sit down next to me and talk with me." And he said, "Oh, I'd like to sit down with you and listen to hear the stories about Tibet, the old time in the Tibet." And then I said, "Oh, Genla, I don't have time there. I have things to do." And he looked at me and he said, "You will always have things to do. You will always have things to do. Sit down here with me now." And he was right. All of us, we will always have things that we need to do every day. There will be things that don't go the way that we want them to go. Will always be taken. And like Atisha said in a beautiful teachings, he said here already in the 11th century, he talks about in these times of degeneration. So either we've done a full cycle, or we're still in these the times of degeneration. And he said that in these times of degeneration, the objects of distraction are so many, and life is short. At night we sleep, and during the day we're distracted. The point is that we're not able to not have all these issues, but it's how we relate to everything. So if we take one commitment, which is just peace speaking or peace listening, remember that speaking is also includes all these texts and email and the written word, or let's say peace communication. We take that as the first point. Okay, this is what I'm doing. Doesn't matter what situation I have to face. Doesn't matter where I am. If it's a family situation or work situation. No, this is a commitment. I'm going to peace speaking. It's difficult, yes, but the more and more I do it, the more I'll make it spontaneous, and it'll be deeper. And then I'll learn how to listen with peace. If we do this, then it's better than making all sorts of offerings. It's the best of offerings. Even as a request, because so that Rinpoche can come back to us in a body. I mean, I say it like this because he's very present for me. It's not that his presence is not here. I think it's like this for me, and I think it's like that for many. But we're limited, and we need someone in flesh and bones, and so we ask him to come back in a body, So, Lama Tsongkhapa, he had gotten to a certain level, and his guru was Buddha Manjushri, so with whom he spoke and received teachings. He had more than 100 gurus before he got to Guru Buddha Manjushri. But anyway, we pray for Rinpoche to come back to us, and the deepest prayer that we can make, the request, is how much we, as much as I want to be guided by him again, to have his presence with me again, that's as much as I need to put effort into putting into practice his teachings. Okay, this is what I wanted to say, and I repeated it in so many ways. Now it's time for our final dedicates. Even if it's a little bit late, let's do the prayer for the swift return. written by Gangchen Rinpoche and Paponka Rinpoche. So it's page 14.
Ramjaya Shinge Gyaldan Tese Tsoya Kebra Losan Tubayan Dorje Chang Tendira Tuje Tubon Cherkene Dagi Reme Nyurdu Drubra Zoya Lede Kunsan Tubkun Samechu Genden Tembe Nimbo Shedrubgi Zimbe Chinle Yarde Pelwala Drenso Tampe Chola Solwa Kyoku Dawa Shiyin Timpana Solde Kyungo Kege Nyerkulwe Larya Yansi Nimro Jebezum Tendre Nangche Chembro Nyurjansho Rigru Tsangme Weme Tsochentu Yandru Pema Shonu Dabshete Tsune Tödan Sampe Trisung Kalden Pungwe Tsonam Gukparasho Kadan Tsangme Namdara Zechudang Kuson Togi Wetun Rabarwe Nikto Gumu Malu Rapsene Deki Pemu Gatse Gebratse Chenre Zidan Chuson Nyurtsegun Jamyan Kade Shinje Gyalpodang Tao Chegya Dorje Shukdenso Tenson Gyatso Chinle Yelmezo Lume choson dembe chin labdam Gyunre tenchin dreljung milushin Lasam tabe nutobgi Mumbe tönama yishin drubra sho Kewa kunto yanda lamadam Dralme chöki pela long chöchin Yunte rabzoyane dorje change kopa nyur tobe yashoya dechen gyaboya lama heroka dechen tarpa choge shayene dechen tapshe ngetun nimpechen dechen yabyon songe dakyonso Losan tempe nyenchi sipe mi Tupten de gyu zime kyun yampor Chinle drove mari mumpa chom Shempen le dro yarpe le ngumprat Gongyo pawe pame tsonam ki Meto dudan rolmo yerkedre Kala chepe tsulgi shekshintu Dacha tungwe solde yutsam gom Shiwe kuyi drowa dzumgi su Shiwe sungi chedra na waraje Shiwe tuni shembe jamse shi Shide semba chembo nyurjansho Tupten dutsi nimbu shempen chu Semche rang rang kamda mungo Dugu tsimtse drubwa rinpoche Rime drove nyenchi nyurjansho Drubwa kyunyi drove shidretsen Daso namkyan shide tuntu nyer Chisi drowa shide chongchotu Male tesi kyosha tunsochi Dacha reme chishin drupala Lama kuncho sumgi tuchindang Kebra tenson dorje shukdense. Chinle maye tongcho zoya kewa kuntu yanda lama Dralme chöki pela longchö ching. Sadan lamge yönte rabzone. Dorje change kopa nyur tobe shoya nimo dele tsendele. Nime koyan delek shin. Ninsen takto delek pe. Koncho sumke jingilo. Koncho sumke ngodrubot sol. Koncho sumke trashisho. All'alba o al tramonto, di notte o durante il giorno, possano i tre gioielli concederci le loro benedizioni, possano aiutarci ad ottenere tutte le realizzazioni e cospargere il sentiero della nostra vita con molti segni di buon auspicio. Grazie a tutti.